All right, everybody. So I did a video a while back about how Marvel Comics has not been getting Spider-Man right for a while, and I just want to do something about what Marvel Comic Books has done right with Spider-Man over the recent years. And we're going to talk about the Ultimate Spider-Man, Miles Morales, today. And one of the things I love about this version of the character is he has already transcended comics into animation, and rumor has it soon to be live action. All right, so hold on. So one of the biggest controversies in comics books is reboots, relaunches, and reframe works of existing characters. It usually gets hit with a lot of negative backlash. Most comic book fans don't want you to see you change their characters. They don't want you to see you change the core principles of their characters, and typically gets a lot of pushback. And I'm someone that kind of sits in between of that. I can see when comic book fans can get frustrated when characters get rebooted constantly. But also, these characters have been around for going to be now coming to like 75 to 100 years. There's only so many different times you can really tell the same stories. So I actually welcome fresh takes of characters. We talked about Absolute Batman a lot on this channel. And at first, I was my gut instinct was like, I don't know if this is something for me. I don't really see, why this would be something that would entertain me. And then after hearing the reviews about it, I went back and I revisited, and I was wrong. Absolute Batman is a completely awesome retelling of Bruce Wayne and the Batman mythos, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And it's right now my favorite comic book. I can't wait for that book to come out on a monthly basis. And Marvel kind of did something adjacent to this a while back when they introduced Miles Morales, known as the Ultimate Spider-Man, which ironically was taking place in what is called the Ultimate Universe in Marvel Comics, which is a parallel timeline where they had a refresh of all the characters, Spider-Man, the Avengers, which was called the Ultimates at the time, and the Ultimate X-Men were the three main flagship titles of that series. And again, ironically enough, a lot of what we see in the MCU, especially in that initial general first phase with Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury, which was absolutely pulled directly from the Ultimate Universe, because the original version of Nick Fury was a white guy. And in the Ultimate comic books, they used Sam Jackson's likeness, and then that has been adopted into the movies, and now is actually what Nick Fury looks like in the actual Marvel universe, ironically enough. So like art imitates art, imitates art, imitates art. So now it's to the point where who knows, what the original versions of these things were. And that can go back into mythology, right? And all the stories that we talk about, whether it's Norse mythology or Greek mythology, like the versions of those characters that were told in these stories over time, I'm sure have changed and been manipulated and altered throughout time. And we can go into a whole different podcast about that. But back to Ultimate Spider-Man, back to Miles Morales, and back to what I think was a really good choice by the original creator, Brian Michael Bendis, of Miles Morales, as introducing a new Spider-Man as opposed to rebooting Peter Parker. So at the time, Brian Michael Bendis was one of the main writers for the Marvel Universe, and specifically the Ultimate Marvel Universe, and specifically the Ultimate Spider-Man, which was a complete retelling of Peter Parker in this new universe. It was fresh, it was hip, people loved it. It sold very, very well. It was an amazing book. The main version, the reasoning of Ultimate Spider-Man was they wanted to go back to when Peter Parker was younger, right? And in the main Marvel comic books continuity at the time, Peter had grown up. He was an adult. And throughout the years, the Marvel writers had made choices about him being married to this person, him being unmarried to this person. And, it was starting to become very convoluted. So Marvel wanted to have a fresh, just total restructuring. Peter Parker, and as a young version, they wanted people to pick up a monthly comic book with a young Peter Parker, which he wasn't in the main Marvel Universe. But they didn't want to eliminate Peter Parker in the main Marvel Universe comic books, because that did have a lot of fans. And they knew that they would get backlash if they stopped that comic book or rebooted their main Marvel Universe. It's something that Marvel has never done. They don't want to reboot their characters. Technically, they've done it, but on its face, they don't. So they came out with the Ultimate Universe. They came out with Ultimate Spider-Man, and Brian Michael Bendis had been writing this book for quite some time. And the whole point of the Ultimate Universe also was it was supposed to be a more realistic, grounded take on superheroes. So again, they were starting to get into the same situation where Peter Parker was getting older and they were kind of in the same spot. So Brian, I believe from what I've read, wanted to reintroduce a younger version of Peter Parker again, but they had already rebooted Peter Parker. So what did they want to do? They added a new Spider-Man, Miles Morales. One of the great things I think that Brian Michael Bendis did when introducing Ultimate Spider-Man was they wanted to take a broader, more fresher take on Spider-Man. And also, this is post 9/11. And he wanted to kind of embrace what it would be to be a young person growing up in New York now, as opposed to when Peter Parker was originally created. And remember, the original Spider-Man came out in the 50s and 60s. So, yeah, that was a representation of who was inhabiting New York at the time and what New York lifestyle was. So he wanted this to be a fresher, more modern version of it. And I think one of the best things he did was by making it an ethnically diverse character and not making it just a white character, because Spider-Man has always been white. He introduced Miles Morales as an African Puerto Rican descent, mixed interracial child that lives in Queens. And that makes sense. You would think that if you're a kid growing up in the city right now in New York City, when Miles was created 10 plus years ago, chances are you would get an ethnically diverse kid as opposed to just a white kid. And I think that was one of the most poignant versions of it. And what I liked about it too was it didn't feel like the reasoning of changing Spider-Man's ethnicity wasn't to serve some type of political agenda. It was more because that's what he had felt was representative of a person that was growing up in the city at the time, and also did give other readers, more ethnically diverse characters, a character that they could resonate with, that they could see themselves in. And I think that was a really good choice. Miles wasn't meant to replace Peter because Peter Parker still exists in this universe. It's really to represent that. And if you see the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movies, you see that it's supposed to mean that anybody can be Spider-Man. Anybody can be the person behind that mask. Doesn't matter where you are, where you come from, what your race is, that anybody who believed in the same principles and ideals that Spider-Man does, which is helping others, they could be that person. And I think that's one of the main themes that they stuck to when introducing a new character. So, spoiler alert, they didn't just want to replace Peter Parker and make him not exist, but they kill Peter Parker in the comics. In the Ultimate Spider-Man comic books, Peter Parker dies in a big, huge crossover event, and then they introduce Miles Morales after to fill his role as Spider-Man. So they don't undo or make a brand new universe where Miles Morales started off as Spider-Man. Peter Parker exists in the history of Miles Morales' timeline, so he knows who Spider-Man is, and he doesn't create the moniker of Spider-Man, but he decides to fill his shoes because he finds that there's a huge gap in not having a Spider-Man in New York and what that means for the people in New York in the comic book. There's definitely some character differences from Miles to Peter. He's not a super genius like Peter Parker is. He's very, very smart and clever in different ways. He's definitely got more grounded, street smart savvy. He deals with anxieties and other different holdbacks that Peter doesn't. So it's definitely cool to see someone trying to be Spider-Man and not necessarily duplicating all the same trials and tribulations that the Peter Parker character had gone through over the years. Miles' parents are alive in this. There's no Uncle Ben, but he does kind of have an Uncle Ben style twist to his origin. His Uncle Aaron is actually the supervillain known as the Prowler. And it's about how Miles has to deal with that reality, being Spider-Man and facing off against his beloved uncle on a personal note, who's part of his family that he loves, and discovering that he is also a supervillain and how he deals with that. So that's really intriguing. Another really great aspect of Miles Morales. Yeah, so one of the things I love about Miles is that it's really a story of responsibility, loss, courage, humor, realistic problems that you would deal with as a teenager and your parents and trying to be a superhero at night. New powers. That's really cool too. He has different powers than Spider-Man. He has some of the traditional spider powers, but also new powers, new family dynamics, new villains, new perspective. And he's not Peter Parker, but he's younger than Peter was when Peter, I believe, became Spider-Man. And Miles is Miles. He's not just a reboot and a brand new costume version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And what I really like about Miles is that he wasn't created as a gimmick, which is what a lot of these reboots and why fans tend to push back on Miles Morales, is most of these reboots are gimmicks to up sales. This was really kind of organic the way he was created, and over time, fans really grew to love him. And I would tell you that I know that there's probably fans that push back about Miles when he first came out that absolutely love Miles. And like, if you want to go back, and read the comic books, go ahead, but you really don't have to. You actually can go see the two Spider-Verse movies that have been released by Sony over the last few years. There's a third one coming out. Those two movies really embrace and embody exactly what it is for Miles Morales as a character. But not only that, but they really understand what it is to be Spider-Man and what Spider-Man means to comic book fans. And they completely knocked it out of the park with those two movies. So just watch those two movies. You'll totally get what I'm saying. Miles Morales didn't replace Spider-Man, didn't replace Peter Parker. He evolved the idea of Spider-Man. He proved that legacies can grow without erasing what was already there, which is what is a great message about what adding Miles Morales to the Peter Parker and Spider-Man fandom really means. I think if more franchises approached reboots like the Miles Morales did, you would see more creativity and you would see more respect from it, and you would see respect for it, and you would definitely see the fans embrace it and give it time, give it patience. And like, that's how you reboot a character. You have to respect the original, innovate meaningfully, tell great stories. Number one, make sure it's a good story, because it doesn't matter if it's a reboot or not. If it's not great, nobody's going to want to see it. And let the characters earn their place. Don't just say this is what you're going to have to like because we say so. Because you like Spider-Man, this is what Spider-Man is. So yeah, let the character itself earn their place in the mythos. And I think that, this is a great framework for how to do reboots and how to do remakes the right way. So hopefully more and more creators take note of what Miles Morales and Ultimate Spider-Man did. So, all right, everybody, hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think about Miles Morales, and or if you've seen the Spider-Verse movies, two of my favorites. Also, keep on the lookout for other nerd links if you want to meet up. We do meetups monthly here at Carter's Comics in Walden, New York. So I'll be happy to link up with you. All right, everybody, bye.